right, thank you everybody for being here. Again, my name is Morgan Nichols. I am a board certified behavior analyst and a licensed professional counselor intern. So I've been working with kids for over a decade in helping them understand their emotions and behaviors and making sure that we can get everything kind of under control. So today's presentation is Why Does My Child Do That? The purpose of today's presentation is to explain the functions of a behavior or why a child would do that behavior. Why are they having a tantrum? Why would they hit? Why are they having a meltdown, right? And if we know the why a child is doing that behavior, then we can select interventions to address that reason. So we'll just jump into it. There are 4 main functions of behavior, but they kind of fall into 2 main categories. Generally, kids are trying to get or obtain attention, or they're trying to get a desirable item or activity, or they're trying to get some sort of sensory input, feelings, a sensation, something like that. They like the way it feels when they hand flap. They like the way it feels when they twirl, or they're trying to escape or avoid something. So they're trying to escape or avoid unwanted attention. Or maybe they're trying to get away from a non-preferred item or activity. Have y'all ever had problems getting your kid to do homework? They're trying to avoid that activity, right? Or they're trying to avoid or escape an unwanted sensory input or feeling. That's exactly what happens when we have an itch and we need to scratch it. We're trying to escape that itching feeling. We don't like it. We want it to stop, right? So those are generally the functions of behavior. Here's a visual chart for you to kind of see the functions of behavior. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a visual learner, so I like to have a chart in there that shows you what it looks like. And this one shows that you're either trying to get something or escape from something. And here's an easy way to remember the functions of behavior. Everybody eats. So E stands for escape, A stands for attention, T stands for tangible, or that's like an item or an activity, and then the S stands for the sensory, that itch you need to scratch or that feeling that you like, something like that. Here is a video to show functions of behavior. All right, so as you can see in that video, which I'm sure that we've all experienced if we have a toddler, he was trying to get the attention of his parents by falling down, crying, throwing a tantrum. So basically, we know that because as soon as he had his parent in line of sight, he would fall down and he would cry. And then when the parent left, he would stop crying immediately. He had control over what was going on, and then he would seek out his parent. And when he found them, he would fall down and start crying again. So that's kind of just a funny example of the function of the behavior. And this one, he was trying to get the parents' attention, right? All right, so I just want to take a quick note to talk about form versus function. So the form of the behavior is what it looks like or what it sounds like. So there could be a behavior such as hitting. And if you have a kid, you can have a kid who will hit to get your attention. You can have a kid who will hit to get you to go away, to escape an activity, to, get out of doing something they don't want to do. Or you can have a kid who hits maybe to get rid of a headache or some sort of sensory item. They're hitting because they can't see very well, something like that. So the same behavior, hitting, can have a different function or why it happens, right? However, the opposite is also true. We can have different behaviors for the same function. So in the video, we saw that the baby was crying to get attention. But there are different ways to get attention. You can also grab toys to get attention, right? You can also call someone's name to get their attention. So if that baby in the video had had the capacity to talk, they could have just said, mama, calling in the name to get an attention rather than crying to get attention. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking a lot about function. And as you can see, if there is one behavior, hitting, that has the same form, but it has a different function, we're going to respond to those that same behavior in different ways, because the function or why they're doing it is a different reason. So we're going to respond to it in a different way. Now, there's a lot more going on than what we immediately see. Thoughts and feelings come into play, but also there are things called setting events. So what is a setting event? It is an event that increases the likelihood that a behavior will occur. It predisposes the child to act or interpret events in a certain way. So what that means is if your toddler wakes up hungry, then it's more likely that they're going to cry. If you don't get a lot of sleep the night before, then it's more likely that you're going to be cranky the next day, right? If I don't know about you guys, but if I'm very hungry, then it's more likely I'm going to not have as much patience, right? So all of those things that make the behavior more likely is called a setting event. And if we know the setting event, we might be able to predict what behavior is more likely to come that day, which means we might be able to react to it a little bit sooner. So antecedents that's the term for something that happens immediately before the behavior. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the behavior is crying. What happened immediately before the behavior of crying? The child was told no. So the child started to cry, right? But a setting event kind of indirectly sets up that problem. And it makes it more likely for the behavior of crying to occur. So let's say, for example, that kid got no sleep last night and they missed breakfast. So they're tired and they're hungry. If I'm tired and hungry, I'm probably not walking into the situation with very much patience. I'm probably not feeling very good. I'm probably wanting people to leave me alone, right? Then I ask for a snack or something, and somebody tells me no, I immediately start crying. So in that situation, the setting event would be the child is tired and hungry. The antecedent would be the child was told no, and the behavior would be the child started to cry, right? So if we as adults or teachers or parents want the child to not cry or want to avoid whatever the behavior is that the child is doing that's problematic, in this situation, crying, we need to know that the setting events and the antecedents are going to affect that behavior, right? Some common setting events, things that set up bad behavior, negative behavior, problematic behavior, some common setting events are lack of sleep or being hungry, maybe having a fight on the way to school, some sort of family conflict, any sort of missed medication. Have y'all ever had a chance where you've had a lot of pain and you missed taking Tylenol, so then instead of your pain decreasing, it increases? That'll set you up for some pretty negative behaviors, right? Any sort of change in routine, irrational beliefs, or negative self-statements. These are all things that are very common setting events. Now, I do want to point out that setting events can be difficult to identify, and sometimes they're unknown. But if we get a chance to know what they are, then they can be very useful in understanding what the function of the behavior is or why that behavior is occurring. So that's why I wanted to make sure I took the time out to talk about them. That can be very powerful if you do know what the setting event is. All right, so here's an example of the contingency of the behavior. So right here, the behavior that's happening is a kid is refusing morning transition, right? So you're trying to take your kid to school, they're just not having it, they're refusing it. We see that as a problem, right? This is
Mm.
what that behavior of refusing the morning transition looks like. It looks like the student clinging to his mother. It looks like maybe he's walking really slow or he's stopping. He doesn't really want to walk at all. It looks like him attempting to run. Maybe he'll run out of the building. That's very dangerous because there are probably cars outside of the building, right? Maybe
Mhm.
it looks like him hitting, kicking, or spitting at staff, which is very dangerous as well. It's not keeping him or others safe. It looks like him trying to escape the building, which again, it's a dangerous behavior. We have to be able to keep them safe. And all of those behaviors happen anywhere from 5 minutes to 90
Yeah.
minutes every day. So that's kind of a big deal, right? So if we want this behavior to stop, and we want this child to be able to transition to school very successfully, where maybe he walks on his own, he has a smile on his face, he does not attempt to run, instead he goes into the classroom, he doesn't hit, kick, or spit at staff, maybe he'll even hold their hand as he walks. If we want him to have not problematic behavior, we need to understand what this looks like. So right here, what happened right before the behavior of not transitioning? What happened was the student resisted the mother at home. So he's saying, no, 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 I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Maybe he's resisting getting in the car, being put in his car seat, stuff like that. And then mom tries to drop him off at school, and the staff walk up to the car to assist mom. So that's what happens right before his behavior, right? But what set up this behavior was the fact that this particular student, he doesn't have any health issues, so that's great. But this particular student has no prior school exposure. He's never been to school. It's a new and scary place to him. He doesn't understand what school is for and why he needs to go and why can't he be with his mother all day, right? But also, he has a history of separation anxiety. So we know, or mom knows in this situation, that every time she's tried to drop him off at grandma's house, he cries. Every time he's been dropped off at a daycare, he's hit, kicked, he's tried to run out of the building, that kind of stuff. And it's because he has separation anxiety. So these setting events set up this behavior to happen, right? And so the consequence, what happens right after the behavior, is right here. So some of the consequence, and that doesn't mean punishment necessarily. It's just consequence is a term for what happens directly after the behavior. It can be good or bad. So for what happened with this particular student, he clung to his mother, he walked slowly, he hit, kicked, and spit staff. So he was sent home early on 8 occasions. So hitting,
Okay.
kicking, spitting staff got him sent home. It worked for him. That's exactly what he wanted to do, right? Sometimes he attempted to run, he hit, kicked, he tried to escape the building. So mom just was like, you know what? I'm just going to take him home. On 6 occasions, she threw up her hands. I'm just going to take him home. I don't have the energy to deal with this today. So he
Mm.
got what he wanted. So these behaviors are getting him what he wants.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of times he hit, kick, or spit staff, and he was able to stay in the admin office with adults waiting for mom. So he didn't have to go to class. Again, getting what he wants, right? And on some occasions, when he did make it to class, he actually engaged in the activity. So once he got to the classroom, he saw, oh, hey, this is fun. Look, there are people here my own age. Oh, look, there's coloring and all sorts of activities to play. I can do this, right? So these are the things that happened directly after the behavior. So these consequences tell me that this behavior of hitting, kicking, spitting, running, or walking slowly and clinging to mother are probably going to keep happening because it's working for him. He's getting sent home, or mother saying, yeah, let's just go home. And that's because we know the function of the behavior is he probably doesn't want to be at school. He's trying to escape or avoid being at school, right?
Mm.
So we want to be careful that we're not accidentally reinforcing the behavior that we don't want, right? So no one wants to teach their child to have a tantrum. Nobody wants to accidentally reward their child for hitting or kicking or spitting at staff, right? But when we take our kid home in that situation, we are rewarding him. We're reinforcing that behavior that we don't want, right? So he wants to escape going to school and he gets to escape going to school, right? So that's what happens. So of course those behaviors are going to continue to happen or maybe even increase in the future. All right, so let's take a look at the four functions a little bit more in depth so that we really understand them. And once we understand them, then I can tell you based on the function how to deal with them, right? So when the function is escape, we refer to escape behaviors, as the name suggests, as any behavior that primarily happens to avoid, delay, or end something unpleasant. So some escape behaviors primarily function to stop a demand or stop a task that's already in progress. Examples would be a child who runs away because he or she doesn't want to take a bath, or a child who throws food because he or she doesn't want to eat broccoli or Brussels sprouts or whatever, right? A child who hits, kicks, bites staff because they don't want to be at school. They're wanting to escape the situation. There are some things that a kid can escape. Um, they don't want to watch television, they leave the room, easy, and that's fine and that's acceptable, right? But then there
Yeah.
are other things that a child can't escape. We just can't allow it. They really need to go to the doctor, they really need to get their teeth cleaned, they really need to go to school and learn how to read and write, and those are things that they can't escape. And so we'll talk a little bit later on how do we deal with that, right? So now we're going to talk about attention. The second function of behavior is attention. So attention seeking behavior is behavior intended to get the attention of a parent or maybe get the attention of another child or get the attention of anyone in the vicinity, really. The child does maybe comical things intended to make the parent laugh in order to avoid doing chores, right? So that might be a combination of attention seeking behavior, getting mom's attention, but also avoiding doing chores. A crying child might display attention seeking behaviors, and that's designed to get the attention of the adult, like we saw in the video. The kid was walking until he saw the parent, and then he started crying because he wanted mom's attention because that's worked for him in the past. So what we want to
Mhm.
do is we want everybody to realize that parent attention is very, very powerful. What we pay attention to and what we ignore is key to what behaviors the kid is going to keep doing in the future or stop doing, right? So in this particular cartoon, the child bunny is throwing a fit or doing something at the table, and the parents are saying this is the part you ignore because you don't want the child to throw a fit, so you're not going to pay attention to it. You're not going to give them the attention that they want. You're going to ignore that behavior because in this particular situation, the child throwing the fit is attention seeking behavior. And if for whatever reason, if the child throwing a tantrum at the table was not attention seeking behavior, we wouldn't ignore it. But I'll talk about that later on when we get to how do we deal with the functions of the behavior. I just want to take this part to point out that we really, really want to catch our children being good, and we want to reinforce that with our attention, with our praise, stuff like that. So if we catch the child doing anything that we like, something that we've asked them to do in the past, and they're doing something good, we want to give them attention for that. We want to give them praise. So make sure that you do that rather than ignore it, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but I tend to have a million things on my mind. I'm juggling all these balls. And if I look over and I see a kid actually doing their work, or I see my child actually doing their chores, I'm thinking, great, one thing to check off my to-do list, wonderful. And I think that, oh, they're finally doing what they're supposed to be doing, but we need to say something out loud. Great job doing your chores. Thank you so much for doing that before I had to ask you. That's amazing. Go over there and give a high five, a fist bump, anything like that. Make sure you catch them being good and give them attention for that. All right. A third function of the behavior is tangible. So this behavior is kind of sort of like the opposite of escape or avoidance. Basically, the child engages in the behavior in order to get something or do something that he or she wants. They want access to a specific item or activity, iPad, video games, anything like that, right? Computer, all of those. Any sort of object that they can hold and touch, and any sort of activity that they can do, that's a tangible. So, for example, a parent may take the iPad away from their child, so the child pinches the parent. If the pinch results in the child getting the iPad back, then the child got what they wanted by pinching. So the pinching is going to continue because they're going to think, "Hey, I pinched her in the past. I got my iPad back. That's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to keep pinching to get my iPad back." Some other examples are the child who whines at the grocery store to get the parent to buy them some candy, right? They think, if I cry and cry and cry,
I
and then
get it.
eventually my parent will give in and I'll get the candy. And if I scream louder, eventually my parent will give in and I'll get the candy. So that's another example. Or a good example, a positive example, is the child who gets up and gets dressed really promptly because they want to go outside and play. So they did the request of them get dressed
Yes.
so that they can get the activity that they want, go outside and play. So that would be an example of tangible. In this picture, it says you can only have your iPad if you finish your homework, right? So the child is very motivated to finish his homework because he wants access to his iPad, which is a tangible. And so this particular kid is saying, "So
Let
let
me
me get
say
this
this.
straight. I don't have to cry and yell to get my cookie." No, you can just simply ask for it. Because if we make sure that we reinforce the behaviors we do like, asking for the cookie rather than yelling and crying for the cookie, then we can make sure that we teach our kids to do the things that we need them to do rather than really annoying behaviors like crying ridiculously loud when we all have a headache, something like that. All right, the last function of behavior is sensory stimulation, or the opposite. So this behavior stimulates the senses, and once excuse me, the child's preference for thrilling or maybe fast sports is kind of a method of sensory stimulation. Another child may rock back and forth as a self-soothing behavior, and that's a sensory stimulation. Some people like fidget toys and squeezy balls and stuff like that. That's also kind of a sensory stimulation because they like the way it feels, right? A person's own movement or actions feel good to that individual. So if a child sits there and plays with their hair and twirls her hair for an extended amount of time, this hair twirling gives that child the sensory input that they're seeking. And so that behavior of hair twirling is going to continue, right? The other thing is a child might want to avoid sensory stimulation, such as a room is too loud. So they might cover their ears or refuse to go in a room. I've had some situations where a kid doesn't want to go in the cafeteria because it's too loud. They want to avoid that sensory stimulation. Or in this particular instance, the light is too bright. So we do that all the time as adults. We want to avoid the light being too bright, so we put on sunglasses to avoid that bright light, right? And in this situation up here, there's an itch, and so you scratch it because you want that sensory stimulation to go away. So now that we know what the four functions or of behavior is, or why a behavior might occur, we're trying to get or attain any of those outcomes, or we're trying to avoid some of those outcomes, right? We kind of have an idea of why the behavior is occurring. We need to know what we can do about it, right? So there are several interventions that can be used based on function. So that way you don't have to just kind of grasp at straws and think, well, maybe timeout will work, because maybe it won't if it's based on escape. Or maybe if I just give him a cookie, he'll shut up. Well, maybe, but he wanted his iPad. So we'll try to figure out what the function is, and we'll give you some interventions based on that. So this chart just kind of shows what happens generally. If we're going to use our example from before, the kid has separation anxiety and he was clinging to his mother. So he ran away, and when they tried to stop him, he hit, kicked, and spit at staff. And the consequence was he got to escape school and go home, or he got to avoid school and go home. What we want to do, one of the things we could possibly do, is we could teach an alternative or replacement behavior. So instead of hitting, kicking, spitting, instead of running away, we're going to teach you to ask for a break. And you still get to escape, but this is no longer a problematic behavior. We're not hitting, we're not kicking, we're not spitting, we're not running away. So we're not going to get hit by a car in the parking lot or anything like that. Instead, we're asking for a break, and we still get to escape, which is a way safer behavior, right? And so once we teach kids this, to ask for a break, once they're reliably here asking for a break rather than running away, hitting, kicking, that kind of stuff, then we can build up their tolerance. Then we can build up their perseverance. Then we can build in waiting before they take a break. And we can build in, well, you need to do a little bit of work before you take a break, right? But we need to make sure that we're reliably here first with this alternative or replacement behavior, because if we're not here and we just immediately say, no, you can't have a break, we need you to do work first, they're going to go right back to their problem behaviors of running away, hitting, kicking, which are very bad, right? To get what they want, which is escape. So anytime they're doing what we ask them to do, ask for a break in this situation, we need to reinforce that by giving them what they asked for, or giving them praise and attention, and allowing them to escape that situation by putting their head down for a few minutes, or by taking a walk or something like that, right? So that's one way we can make sure that we're dealing with the problematic behavior. Here is a chart of function-based interventions, right? So if the reason the child is doing their behaviors, they want to escape or avoid something, here are some tactics we can use to make sure that they don't escape or avoid it. If the reason the student is trying to do something is to gain your attention, here are some tactics we can use. And if the reason the student is doing that behavior is to gain a tangible, an iPad, a computer, a phone, an activity, they really want to play basketball, then here are some interventions we can do. And I actually kind of break these down in more detail on the next few slides. And then again, for you visual learners like myself, I have this fancy chart. Now this chart is actually meant for school and not necessarily for at home, but it can be used at home as well, because some of these things can definitely be used. I mean, it says things like novel staff, so we can't really use that one at home as much, but we can definitely give our children preferred items or high interest items. Their favorite toy is kind of what that means. Proximity control, we can stand next to them while they're doing whatever they're doing, right? You know, we can make sure that we modify the environment, and so that might look like moving things around in the environment. So for example, what that looks like is if you have a kid who you ask, hey, we need to go brush our teeth, and for some reason they hate brushing their teeth, so then they bolt, they run every time you ask them to do that, right? What you can do is you can modify the environment, move the couch, move the chairs, move a bookcase in the environment so that they have to kind of walk around it in order to get out the door, which slows them down, which gives you time to catch up with them and maybe stop them from running out the door, maybe stop them from running into the street, something like that. So we basically put a little bit of a roadblock in their way. Or we modified the environment to make it really, really exciting for them too. They might hate brushing their teeth, but we can modify the environment by making the bathroom smell really good, getting them a really cool stool with their name on it to stand on, getting them their favorite Superman toothbrush. It really gets them excited to be in that environment to then do the unpleasant activity that they don't want to do. So those are two different ways that you can kind of modify the environment. The other thing I want to point out is right here when it has interventions, and I'll talk about this a little bit more as we talk about each individual intervention in the next few slides. But these are antecedent interventions here in the blue. Antecedent means it happens before the behavior, which means that these are all things you can do to hopefully stop the problematic behavior from even occurring, right? So we don't want the tantrum to even occur. Here's some things that we can do as parents and put in place. We don't want him to even start to run away. Here are some things that we can do before the running away behavior happens to prevent that from even happening, right? But we're human, and sometimes the behavior is still going to happen. So these down here in the red are consequence interventions. So what that means is the behavior occurred, the behavior happened. So the kid did run, he did throw a tantrum, he did hit you. So what can you do after that behavior occurred, right? So we weren't able to prevent it. That's okay, it happens sometimes. But how do we make sure that we reduce the likelihood that it's going to happen again in the future? And here are some things that we can do for that. So for example, if the kid is hitting you on the arm to get your attention, but we really hate that, it's very annoying, we don't like it, that hitting behavior is already happening. So we didn't prevent it. We didn't do these things to prevent it, but one of the things we can do is we can ignore it, which is the very last one down here, which means that we're not going to give him the attention that he's seeking by doing the behavior that we don't like, right? So if he were to stop hitting us and call our name, mommy, oh, okay, we would immediately give attention because that's the behavior we want. That's how we want our kid to get our attention. We want him to say mommy versus hitting our arm, right? So we can ignore the behavior that we don't like, and we can immediately give attention to the behavior that we do like, right? Another consequence intervention that happens after the fact is, let's see, working through it, escape extinction. So if the kid is trying to escape doing something, they're trying to escape brushing their teeth, they don't like it. We put all of these things in place up here to prevent him from running out of the bathroom, from brushing his teeth. But even though we put all those things in place, he still ran out of the bathroom this morning, of all mornings, just because of a setting event. He woke up tired and cranky, right? So that made it more likely that the running out of the bathroom was going to occur. It made it more likely that the problem behavior is going to occur, right? So even though we have all these things in place, he tries to run. So what we can do is work through it or do escape extinction, which is a specific protocol, which I'll go into in the next slides. All right, so I don't know about y'all, but I know a lot of kids that try to get out of doing things. They want to avoid unpleasant things. They want to avoid doing their work. They want to avoid doing chores. They want to escape school. They want to escape from, I don't know, just doing anything they don't want to do, right? So here are lots of different intervention strategies we can do when the function or the why of the behavior is the kid is trying to escape doing it. We still need them to do it. So here are some interventions. So we can adjust the difficulty of the task. Maybe instead of asking, I don't know, our teenager to do 3 loads of laundry, we can decrease the amount of work and say, look, I really just need you to do 1 load of laundry. Help me out, and then it doesn't seem like such a mountain in their head. 1 load of laundry is a lot more doable than the 3. We can definitely offer choices. We can allow the child to choose maybe the order of the chores that they're going to do, or how many chores are they going to do today versus how many they're going to do tomorrow, that kind of stuff. So if they have some sort of choice in it, they're a lot more likely to do it. We can definitely increase the interest in the activity. I don't know about y'all, but we're talking about chores. So my least favorite chore is laundry. I just hate it. I don't know why. I hate it. But I'm a lot more interested in doing laundry if I bring the clothes over to the couch and I'm watching TV while I'm folding. And that increases my interest in the activity. I get to do something, which is watching TV, which is something I really enjoy while I'm doing the chore. And so that makes it more likely that I'm going to do that chore. We can do the same thing with kids. We can incorporate their hobbies and their interest into the activity. So if we're trying to get our kid to brush their teeth, they're running out of the room every time we do that. But we know that they love Superman. Guess what? We're going to incorporate a Superman toothbrush into that activity that they don't like. Something that they really like goes with something that they don't really like, right? Let's see, we can alter the length of the task. And that could look like just providing frequent breaks, right? So maybe your kid needs to do 4 chores and you've only given them an hour to do it. Well, if they do one chore and then take a 10-minute break and they do a second chore, take a 10-minute break, it might actually take them 2 hours to do the chores rather than one. But they feel better because they get a short break in between them, right? So, and the last one says use behavioral momentum. And that basically is presenting easy requests before you present a difficult request. So, that's asking your kid to do something that is very easy, that you know they can do, you know they have the skills to do before you ask them to do something else. And that could be something as small as, hey, buddy, come here and give me a high five. If they like giving high fives, give me a high five, turn around, touch your nose, be silly with it, dance with me. Okay, now I need you to go brush your teeth, because you already got them the ball rolling of them complying with you. They gave you a high five, they turned around, they did a dance with you. They're more likely to comply with you when you get the behavioral momentum going, and then you ask the request of, now go brush your teeth. I mean, that's not going to work every single time, because I've definitely run into that with my kid where they're like, yeah, mom, I'll dance with you. No, but it is a lot more likely to occur. Here are some more escape maintained interventions. So let's see, we can increase the predictability, right? So if we use a visual schedule, if we use a clock that shows how much time they have to relax before we need them to start doing their homework, before we need them to start taking a bath and getting ready for bed, if they have a visual in front of them, it'll increase the predictability of what's going to happen, and they'll be more likely to comply because they know that that's just their regular routine. They know every single day when I get home from school, I'm supposed to hang up my backpack rather than put it on the floor. They know that they're supposed to immediately get out their homework folder. They know that they can then get a snack. It's a routine. They know it, so they're more likely to do it, right? And then lastly, we can just kind of modify instruction delivery, and that's just the way we tell them how to do it. I had a kid that I worked with before where he really did not like to talk a whole lot, but he did not mind if I gave bullet points on a sticky note. And so I didn't talk to him, but I wrote down the bullet points on a sticky note of exactly what I needed him to do, and I would just put it on his desk every day. And there were a couple of days where we just didn't even speak to each other, but he got all of his work done. And so if you're having some problems with your kid doing what you need them to do, especially an angsty or moody teenager, something like that, maybe modifying how you give the instructions could help with that. All right, so now we're going to go into some intervention strategies if the function is attention. So if the kid is doing whatever behavior to gain your attention, but the behavior is bad, they're hitting you, they're kicking you to gain your attention, they're yelling while you're on your phone to get your attention, anything like that. So what can we do? What are some intervention strategies? So we can schedule attention, right? We can have you periodically check in to provide attention, which means that they're less likely to yell at you and scream at you to get your attention because you just gave them attention, right? we can increase the proximity to them, which means we can periodically move closer to them. If we stand next to them, maybe while they're doing their chores, then I'm right here to if they have any questions or if they have any concerns, right? We can provide a preferred activity. So maybe when you're occupied, you have to be in this phone conversation or something like that, and your kid really wants their attention, then we need their attention on something else, which is something they really like to do, right? So that's exactly what we do when we take them to doctor's offices. We're sitting in the waiting room. We kind of need our kid to be quiet, so we provide them a game on the iPad or something like that. What's their favorite thing to do? Do they love to color? Do they love to play a game? Something like that, right? DRA and DRO stands for differential reinforcement of alternative behavior or other behavior. And kind of what that looks like is you take the problem behavior. Let's say in this situation, the problem behavior is yelling, and you put that on extinction, which means you're going to ignore that behavior. You're going to ignore the yelling. But as soon as they do an acceptable behavior, such as tap you on the shoulder, you're going to immediately give them attention. So they're yelling, mom, 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 mom. You're ignoring. You're doing such a good job of ignoring that yelling. And then they finally realize that that's not working. They stop and they tap you on the shoulder. Hi, what do you need? So you immediately reinforce or praise the behavior that you do like. You do like them tapping them on the shoulder, but you're going to ignore the behavior you don't like, which is the yelling. If the function of the behavior for your child is tangible, they really, really want that phone. They really want that iPad. They really want the computer. They really want to do that activity. They want to paint. They want to go outside. Then what you can do is maybe you can schedule a transitional activity. So that might look like they need to transition from having their break at home right after school where they can eat a snack and watch TV. Watching TV is a lot more fun than doing homework, right? But they need to stop watching TV and they need to do their homework. Not a fun thing, right? So you can schedule kind of a kind of preferred activity to do in between those two things. So they love watching TV, they like reading a little bit, and they don't want to do their homework. So what you can do is say, hey, you know what? It's time to turn off the TV, but you can at least read for a little bit. Okay. So they're more likely to do that as opposed to when you say, hey, I need you to turn off the TV and do your homework. What? No, I hate homework. So then we're going to get a huge explosion. They're going to yell about it. But if we kind of ease them into doing what they need to do, I need you to turn off the TV and you can read. I don't want to. Yeah, but it's time that the TV goes off. At least you can read. You know you're in the middle of that book. You like it. Yeah, okay. So they're more likely to do what you need them to do. And then when they're at the end of a chapter, you can say, great job reading. Now it's time to get out your math homework. Look, I'll sit here and do it with you. Whatever that may be, right? You can increase the accessibility of the items or activities that they're asking for, right? So you can put the preferred items within their reach. And that's like if you don't need them to do another activity or something in between. You can make the preferred activities more frequently accessible to them. So if they really, really want to watch TV all day, every day, but you need them to do like some chores or do their homework or something, you can make TV more accessible to them rather than just 1 hour a day, right? If that's the regular rule in your household, you only get to watch TV 1 hour a day. Look, I know that this is our rule, only 1 hour a day, but I noticed that you've been working really hard lately. So if you don't, give any problems whenever I ask you to do your homework, you can have TV for 2 hours a day. Just make it more accessible to them, right? And then you can do the same thing that we talked about with attention, which is differential reinforcement of alternative or other behavior. And that is ignore the problem behavior and reinforce or reward the behavior that you like to see, right? So again, if they're yelling or hitting or throwing a meltdown tantrum because they want their iPad, they want the phone back, then we're going to ignore that. But if they get up and they're like, can I have the phone? Yes. You're going to give them the phone because they asked for it appropriately rather than through a tantrum, right? And then, like I said, we can build up the tolerance. We can build up them waiting to get the phone next time. That's always something that we can learn, but we want to reinforce them doing the desired behavior, which is them asking for it, right? I just wanted to talk really quickly about positive reinforcement. So, if you don't know where to start, you can always start by positively reinforcing behavior you like, which is giving praise to behavior you like, um, giving a treat for behavior you like, anything like that. But positive reinforcement is not bribery. It is certainly not the same thing because positive reinforcement, the adult is in control and it's a teaching tool. You're trying to change the problem behaviors to change them into desired behaviors. You're trying to change the problem behavior of yelling into the desired behavior of tapping you on your shoulder, right? Whereas bribery, the kid is in control and you increase the problem behaviors of yelling because that's what you're reinforcing, right? So, an example of bribery is the kid is already doing the negative behavior. They're yelling and they're sitting under their table and you just can't handle it anymore. So you say, if you stop and get out of the table, then I'm going to give you your iPad back. And they're like, ooh, okay. And because they got their iPad, they're going to get out from under the table and they're going to sit there, but they're going to yell and scream and sit under the table next time they want their iPad, which is not good. That's a problem behavior. But positive reinforcement is saying something like, when you're sitting in your chair and working, then you can have your iPad or you can earn a token or whatever it is, right? So that's explaining to the child the desired behavior, the behavior I want you to do is I want you to sit in your chair and I want you to work. And when you're doing that desired behavior, then you can earn whatever it is you're asking for. And that's going to increase the desired behavior. So make sure that you're doing positive reinforcement rather than bribery. I do want to point out that there will be something called an extinction burst. And that's basically explaining that the behavior is going to get worse before it gets better. And the reason is because you're putting these boundaries into place that the kid has never really come across before. So they're very like confused and they're like, I'm going to push back against these boundaries, right? And I feel like we've all seen this before. We've experienced this as parents. Maybe you've had a toddler walking down the candy aisle of a store and they're reaching for candy and they're like, give me. And then you say no. So they're like, meh, and they start screaming louder, right? The behavior got worse, right? And that's okay. But we know that if we give in, that the kid's just going to scream every time we go down the candy aisle. So don't give in, even though it's really hard. The behavior is going to get worse before it gets better, which is called an extinction burst, but you just have to get past that, right? So make sure you have communication. That's their way of communicating, especially little kids. They don't really have another way of communicating other than crying. And so we understand that the behavior is going to get worse before it gets better, but that's okay and expected, right? So we're going to make sure that we're very thoughtful with our interventions. Um, B.F. Skinner said the way positive reinforcement is carried out is more important than the amount. So, for example, if you are having your child earn tokens for doing chores, and after they get 5 tokens, then they can turn it in for their allowance money. I don't know, or they can earn some M&Ms or something, whatever it is they want to earn. They can turn their tokens in for iPad time, right? If you give your kid a token in this manner, okay, they got the token, they did what they needed to do, they got the token, but that manner is not very reinforcing to them. But if you give them the token and you say, buddy, I am so proud of you. I love the way that you did your chores. I like that I saw you sweep every corner of the kitchen. And here's your token that you earned. Thanks. Good job. High five. The way you give it is a lot more important than the amount of tokens that the kid has. Because in one situation, the kid was just handed a token, but they don't know exactly what they did that that earn them that token. They don't know that they have your love and appreciation with it. They don't know any of that. But if you take the time to stop and explain to them, I love the way you swept the kitchen. I love that you did it without me having to ask. Then they know the exact behaviors that led to that token, and they're going to make sure that they do them in the future, right? All right. So the last point I really want to make is say what you mean and mean what you say. And so please don't make promises that you can't keep. Make sure you follow through on consequences. Otherwise, you're undermining your authority, right? So what that might look like is um, if the kid had a very bad day today, then we're not going to take away something that they earned tomorrow or the next day necessarily, because today they're going to get their consequence, which is going to kind of reinforce in their mind this behavior of throwing a tantrum in the store is going to mean that I'm going to get in trouble, as opposed to if you wait to punish the kid tomorrow for throwing the tantrum in the store today, they might have already forgotten, or they might not be able to make that connection depending on how old they are. They might be like, all I did was wake up. I didn't do anything wrong. I came in here and I'm already getting a spanking. What's going on? Or I'm already grounded, that kind of stuff. So just make sure that you follow through with your consequences in a timely manner. Don't make any promises you can't keep. And that'll keep you from undermining your own authority, which will make sure that your child is more likely to follow you and your rules. All right, well, that's it for the presentation. I hope that you guys learned something from it, and I want to take the time to thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, reach out and let us know.